Hello, future biologists. Welcome to our journey into the incredible world of the human body. Today, we are diving deep into the digestive system and focusing on a crucial part of how we eat, swallowing, and peristalsis. Have you ever wondered how food gets from your mouth to your stomach, even when you're upside down? We'll explore this fascinating process across 4 levels of understanding, from easy basics to advanced insights. Let's get started. Ready to unravel the mystery of how your food travels? Let's begin with the simple yet amazing mechanics of swallowing and the wave that pushes your meal along. First up, let's understand swallowing. It's the action of moving food or liquid from your mouth, down your throat, and into your food pipe, which we call the esophagus. Think about it. When you chew, you voluntarily use your tongue to push the food to the back of your throat. But once it's there, your body takes over automatically. That's the involuntary part. Your tongue is like a little shovel, perfectly designed to prepare and push that chewed food, or bolus as we call it, right where it needs to go to start its journey. Now, imagine a wave moving through a tube. That's essentially what peristalsis is. It's the rhythmic, wave-like contraction and relaxation of the muscles found in the walls of your esophagus and other parts of your digestive system. These coordinated muscle movements act like a conveyor belt, pushing the food along. The best part? It's completely involuntary. You don't even have to think about it. A great example is when you drink water upside down. Peristalsis works against gravity to make sure the water still reaches your stomach. It's truly a marvel of your body's design. Time to test your understanding. Here are 3 questions to check what you've learned. Question 1. Is swallowing entirely a voluntary process? Why or why not? Question 2. Describe peristalsis in your own words. Question 3. Why is peristalsis important for digestion, especially when you're not upright? Take a moment to think about your answers. Great job with the basics. Now, let's peel back another layer and explore the swallowing and peristalsis process in a bit more detail, discovering the clever mechanisms at play. The act of swallowing, or deglutition, is surprisingly complex, involving a symphony of over 20 muscles working together. It occurs in 3 main phases. First, the oral phase is voluntary. You chew your food, mix it with saliva to form a soft bolus, and your tongue expertly pushes it to the back of your mouth. Next comes the pharyngeal phase, which is entirely involuntary. Here, a crucial flap called the epiglottis covers your windpipe, and your soft palate blocks your nasal passage, ensuring food goes down the right pipe. Finally, the esophageal phase begins, where peristalsis takes over to guide the food to your stomach. It's a perfectly choreographed sequence. One of the heroes of the swallowing process is the epiglottis. This small, leaf-shaped piece of cartilage is situated at the base of your tongue. Its vital role is to act as a protective lid. During swallowing, it automatically folds downwards, effectively covering the opening of your larynx, which is your voice box, and your trachea, or windpipe. This action is critical because it prevents any food or liquid from accidentally entering your respiratory tract, which would otherwise lead to choking. It's your body's built-in safety mechanism, ensuring every bite goes exactly where it's supposed to. Let's dive deeper into how peristalsis actually works. The walls of your esophagus are lined with 2 distinct layers of smooth muscle. There's an inner layer of circular muscles and an outer layer of longitudinal muscles. Imagine a tube of toothpaste. When the circular muscles behind the food bolus contract, they squeeze it forward, much like you squeeze the tube. Simultaneously, the longitudinal muscles ahead of the bolus contract, shortening that section of the tube and widening its diameter. This coordinated push and pull creates a powerful, wave-like motion that efficiently propels the food downwards, ensuring it reaches your stomach without fail. Alright, let's consolidate your knowledge with 5 practice questions. Question 1. Name the three phases of swallowing. Question 2. What is the primary function of the epiglottis during swallowing? Question 3. Explain the roles of circular and longitudinal muscles in peristalsis. Question 4. How long does it typically take for food to travel down the esophagus? Question 5. What is the function of the esophageal sphincter at the end of the esophagus? Think carefully about each one. Excellent work so far. Now, let's elevate our understanding even further. We'll explore the intricate neural controls and various types of peristalsis that orchestrate this vital digestive function. The control of swallowing is remarkably sophisticated, primarily managed by a specialized swallowing center located in the medulla oblongata of your brainstem. This center acts like a conductor, orchestrating the precise movements of numerous muscles via a network of cranial nerves, including the trigeminal, facial, glossopharyngeal, vagus, and hypoglossal nerves. Sensory receptors in your pharynx constantly send signals to this center, which then initiates the involuntary phases of swallowing. This intricate neural coordination ensures that the entire process is smooth, efficient, and perfectly timed, preventing any missteps that could lead to choking or aspiration. Beyond the initial swallow, peristalsis isn't just one type of wave. We have two key types. Primary peristalsis is the direct wave initiated by the act of swallowing itself, traveling the entire length of the esophagus to push the food down. However, sometimes the primary wave isn't enough, or perhaps there's some reflux. That's where secondary peristalsis comes in. This type isn't triggered by a swallow but by the local distension of the esophageal wall if food gets stuck or acid backs up. It's a localized reflex designed to clear any remaining contents or irritants, acting as a backup mechanism to ensure your esophagus stays clear and functional. The esophagus is guarded by two critical muscular rings called sphincters. The upper esophageal sphincter, or UES, is made of skeletal muscle. It prevents air from entering your esophagus when you breathe and stops reflux into your pharynx. At the other end, the lower esophageal sphincter, or LES, made of smooth muscle, relaxes to let food into your stomach but then contracts firmly to prevent stomach acid from flowing back up into your esophagus. When these sphincters don't function correctly, it can lead to conditions like dysphagia, or difficulty swallowing, achalasia, where the LES fails to relax, or GERD, which is chronic acid reflux due to a weak LES. These disorders highlight the critical role of these muscular gateways. It's time for some harder questions. Here are 7 to challenge your understanding. Question 1. Where is the swallowing center located, and what is its primary role? Question 2. Differentiate between primary and secondary peristalsis. Question 3. Explain the function of the upper esophageal sphincter. Question 4. What is achalasia, and how does it relate to peristalsis? Question 5. Which cranial nerves are involved in the neural control of swallowing? Question 6. Describe the 3 layers of the esophageal wall. Question 7. How does the epiglottis prevent choking during swallowing? Good luck! You've mastered the complex. Now, let's push the boundaries even further, exploring the competitive depth, intricate engineering insights, and fascinating clinical aspects of swallowing and peristalsis. Let's delve into the detailed anatomy and neurophysiology. The esophagus isn't uniformly muscular. Its upper third is composed of skeletal muscle, allowing for voluntary initiation of swallowing. The middle third is a mix, and the lower third is entirely smooth muscle, where involuntary peristalsis takes over. This transition is crucial for the coordinated process. The enteric nervous system, or gut-brain, within the esophageal wall, particularly Auerbach's plexus, fine-tunes peristalsis. Neurotransmitters like acetylcholine excite muscle contraction, while nitric oxide and vasoactive intestinal peptide inhibit it, ensuring a precise sequence of relaxation and contraction. This intricate system ensures efficient food transport. To diagnose and understand swallowing disorders, we use advanced techniques like esophageal manometry. This involves inserting a thin catheter with pressure sensors into the esophagus to measure pressure changes during swallowing. High-resolution manometry provides incredibly detailed spatiotemporal plots, allowing specialists to precisely identify motility disorders such as achalasia, where the lower esophageal sphincter fails to relax, or diffuse esophageal spasm. Think of it as mapping the pressure waves to pinpoint exactly where the conveyor belt is malfunctioning. Another technique, barium swallow videofluoroscopy, uses X-rays to visually track food movement, revealing structural or functional issues that might impede the process. The biomechanics of bolus transport are fascinating. The efficiency of food movement depends on factors like the food's consistency, its volume, and the precise coordination of esophageal muscle contractions. Peristaltic waves create a pressure gradient, literally pushing the bolus forward. The speed and amplitude of these waves are critical for effective transport. The perfectly timed opening and closing of both the upper and lower esophageal sphincters are paramount. If these sphincters don't function correctly, it can lead to serious issues. For instance, in achalasia, the lower esophageal sphincter fails to relax, causing food to accumulate. Chronic acid reflux, or GERD, often stems from a weakened lower esophageal sphincter, allowing stomach acid to flow back up. Understanding these biomechanical principles is key to diagnosing and treating these conditions. From a clinical perspective, managing swallowing and peristalsis disorders involves various interventions. Pharmacologically, medications like proton pump inhibitors can reduce stomach acid for GERD, while muscle relaxants might alleviate esophageal spasms. Endoscopic procedures offer minimally invasive solutions, such as dilating strictures or injecting botulinum toxin to relax a spastic sphincter. More advanced techniques like peroral endoscopic myotomy, or POEM, can surgically cut muscle fibers to relieve obstruction. In severe cases, surgical interventions like Heller myotomy for achalasia or fundoplication for severe GERD are performed. These diverse approaches highlight the complex interplay of biology, medicine, and technology in ensuring this fundamental bodily function operates smoothly. It's truly an area where scientific understanding directly translates into improved patient care and quality of life. Let's tackle the first 5 hardest questions. Question 1. Describe the muscular composition of the esophagus and its functional significance for swallowing. Question 2. Explain the roles of acetylcholine and nitric oxide in the enteric nervous system's control of esophageal peristalsis. Question 3. How does high-resolution manometry aid in diagnosing esophageal motility disorders compared to conventional manometry? Question 4. Discuss the biomechanical factors that influence the efficiency of bolus transport in the esophagus. Question 5. Differentiate between the causes and symptoms of achalasia and GERD in the context of esophageal sphincter function. Here are the remaining 5 questions to complete your challenge. Question 6. What are the primary pharmacological, endoscopic, and surgical treatment approaches for severe achalasia? Question 7. How do the swallowing mechanisms of ruminants and birds differ from that of humans, particularly concerning peristalsis? Question 8. Explain the significance of the swallowing center in the medulla oblongata and list 2 cranial nerves involved in its efferent pathways. Question 9. Describe the 3 layers of the esophageal wall and their specific contributions to the mechanical process of swallowing. Question 10. Beyond preventing choking, what other vital function does the upper esophageal sphincter perform? Take your time and demonstrate your comprehensive understanding. And that brings us to the end of our in-depth exploration of swallowing and peristalsis. We've journeyed from the basics of how food moves to the complex neural controls and clinical applications. I hope you found this topic as fascinating as I did. Remember, the more you learn about your body, the more you appreciate its incredible design. For more such engaging and comprehensive educational content, make sure to visit synapse.omaps.in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for regular updates and to continue your learning adventure. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep growing your knowledge. See you in the next session.